reported his view of this shooting. Owen's children were playing in a field next to their apartment complex when an unidentified 58-year-old woman, presumably the shooter, began yelling at them to get off her land and call them racial slurs, according to Crump's statement. Again, you can't believe anything Crump says. He makes factually false statements about these cases all the time. Child witnesses told police a dispute ensued over the children's tablet, I guess the iPad, and said the woman had thrown roller skates at the juveniles. I don't know. According to Crump, Owen's children left the area after the altercation, but accidentally left an iPad behind, which the woman took. When one of the children went to her residence to retrieve it, she threw it, hitting the boy and cracking the screen. So they had the iPad. It was just apparently reportedly damaged. So the victim here, the black woman, Owens, was not going to the old woman's house to recover a seized iPad. They had the iPad. The police did not confirm that the woman had thrown an iPad, so we don't know. This is all myth. Woods, who was shot, when asked... No, Woods is the sheriff. Sorry. Woods is the sheriff. The victim here is Owens. Sheriff Woods, when asked Monday about parts of Crump's statement, said he could not yet confirm or deny the allegations. Well, of course not. Including what was thrown by the neighbor and whether it was directly at the children. Right, the old woman could have found their kids' toys on her property and just tossed them over the property line. That doesn't mean she's hurling them at the kids. This is the kind of misrepresentation that Benjamin Crump engages in all the time. Having heard about the dispute, Owens, the woman shot here, went to confront her neighbor about striking a child with a pair of skates, a witness told police. People at the scene told police that the woman shot had begun knocking on her neighbor's door when a weapon was fired from within the home. Bullets went through the front door and hit Owens. Is it difficult for anybody to imagine that maybe the woman who was shot was not politely knocking on the door? Maybe she believed that her child had been assaulted and she was angry and banging on that door? Is that possible? Might that be the narrative we hear from the shooter here? That the shooter feared that this angry woman outside her door was trying to get into her house for purposes of committing acts of violence? I don't know, but that's the correct legal question that certainly Benjamin Crump's not asking. After being shot, the woman staggered back, collapsed beneath a tree, calling 911. When police arrived, they gathered around her, tried to give medical aid. They began screaming that the shooter was inside the residence. The shooter stayed inside her house until police arrived and took her into custody. She has not been arrested, but could be charged with homicide. They mean a killing crime. Homicides are not necessarily crimes, right? Self-defense, a lawful self-defense killing is a homicide, but it's not a crime. The homicide would typically be some degree of murder or manslaughter. Owen's mother, the woman who was shot, her mother said in an interview, well, she doesn't know what happened. So her daughter did what any parent would do in confronting the neighbor. She simply knocked on the door. Is that what any parent would do in confronting a neighbor who caused injury to their child? Or might she be more angry than that? She simply knocked on the door. Was the mother present to observe this? Was she a personal witness? The woman shot her through the closed door with her son, 9 years old, standing next to her. The victim was unarmed. The sheriff's office said this had not been confirmed. The sheriff, citing information about the alleged shooter, said there was a lot of aggressiveness at the door from both neighbors. Oh, wait a minute. Whether it be banging on the doors, banging on the walls, and threats being made. Well, that sounds different. We're hearing quite a different narrative from the sheriff than we are from the mother of the woman shot and her legal representative, Benjamin Crump. Might this kind of conduct create in the woman inside the home a reasonable perception that her home was about to be invaded by this angry person? I don't think it was the homeowner banging on doors, banging on walls. Why would she bang on her own door and her own walls, making threats? I think it was the woman who was shot doing those things. I don't know, but that seems the most likely scenario. Friday's incident appeared to have been tied to a neighborhood feud over time. Let's see. Florida State Senator Chevron Jones, Democrat, argued that the case showed it was long past time to repeal the state's stand your ground law. Why? This is not a stand your ground case. Stand your ground has nothing to do with the facts in this case. There would have been no legal duty for the shooter to retreat before defending herself in an otherwise lawful case of self-defense, even if Florida were a duty to retreat state, and stand your ground did not exist in Florida law. The senator goes on, quote, if the shooter feared for her life as she hid within her home, then she should have called the police. Instead, she decided to fire her weapon through the door, killing AJ in front of her children. This is nothing short of murder, and the shooter should be charged as such. Maybe it is murder. Maybe it's defense of highly defensible property. The sheriff's office said the investigation had been delayed because, a couple of Owen's kids who witnessed the shooting could not be interviewed because of the trauma. The sheriff says a lot of the rumors and questions out there have been that we're not doing anything. We're not moving fast enough because we want to seek justice and we want to ensure that we get the facts right, especially in a case to this level. We just don't take always one side because it doesn't always paint the full picture. Reasonable enough, Sheriff. Police collected 2 firearms, bullets, and other evidence at the scene, the report showed. Wait a minute. There were 2 firearms? What's that mean? Was one of them inside the house and one of them outside the house? Did one of them belong to the woman who was shot? Did she go to this woman's house and bang on her walls and doors, have an angry confrontation with a gun in her hand? Is it possible that's why she got shot by the woman inside the home? Or did the woman inside the home have a gun in each hand, like an old Western? Does that seem likely? It's possible she had a gun in hand and a gun elsewhere in the house, and that was seized too, but it seems to me like it would be useful to know whether or not both guns were seized from inside the house. In the past 2 years, sheriff's deputies have received 6 to 8 calls relating to the property where Friday's shootings took place. Made by who? Who was calling the police? Was it the homeowner who fired the shot? Or was it the woman who got shot? Would that make a difference, perhaps, in who had a reasonable perception of fear that they were calling repeatedly for police assistance? But we're not given that information, are we? Why not? Why not? I'm always suspicious when the facts are hidden, that the facts are being hidden because they're not consistent with the narrative that Benjamin Crump wants propagated. That's been my experience. I wish our shooter would have called us instead of taking actions into her own hands. I wish, this is the sheriff speaking, I wish Mrs. Owens would have called us in hopes we could have never got to the point in which we are here today. Sure, I mean, you always wish that it hadn't come to violence, but that's not the question now. It did come to violence. Who was the aggressor? Who was the defender? That's the relevant question now. Generally speaking, if you're lawfully defending yourself against an imminent deadly force threat, there is no time to call the police. There's no time. Imminence being another of the elements of self-defense, that the threat you're defending yourself isn't some past threat. It's not some speculative future threat. It's a threat actually in progress or immediately about to happen. There's no time to call the police if that's the fact.